Honda's new NT1100 has me thinking. I was pretty settled on the Africa Twin Adventure Sports becoming my next bike. But this new unexpected sport tourer from Honda has me wondering if that's the right decision. So today, I thought I'd compare the strengths and weaknesses of both bikes and come to a conclusion on which is best for me, and in the process, help discover if it might be right for you. Now, from comments I've had in the past, I know very well that some of you might be thinking, now hang on there champ, you can't compare an adventure bike to a sport tourer. They're two completely different categories, and that's true. But it might surprise you how many Africa Twin owners use their bikes mostly for commuting and touring and rarely see the off-road. This is no bad thing. It's a testament to the all-round competency of the Africa Twin and why the bike appeals to me and so many. In the past, all my bikes have been road-focused and venturing off-road was never really a priority. In all my years of riding road bikes, I've only owned two bikes that could be classed as adventure-ish. My current NC750X and the Kawasaki Versys 1000 I bought back in 2016. Everything else I've owned has either been sport tourer, naked or cruiser. I enjoy riding a wide range of bikes, and if I'm going to be totally honest with myself, I'm probably a sport tourer kind of guy. The problem with the sport tourers I've owned in the past is that they tended to be a little boring or mellow. Hence my deviations into sport bikes and cruisers over the years. They're just a little bit more exciting to ride, more of an experience. This all changed with the NC750X however. Having a bike equally at home on bitumen or gravel has really changed the way I ride. Rather than the hopping from town to town and the coastal rides that I used to do, I now find myself exploring the countryside, increasingly spending more time on gravel and travelling the kinds of roads I used to avoid. But having said that, when you boil it all down, a lot of my time is sat cruising down the highway, and this is where I'm seeking more comfort, to the point where I was even recently considering a Goldwing as my next ride. Therein lies my quandary. On one hand you have a bike that's a good all-rounder, the Africa Twin, but on the other hand we have this new NT1100 contender, which may be even more comfortable in the seat, more capable on-road, and a bike that looks to offer superior wind protection. A bike capable of doing longer highway hours in the saddle. But as tempting as that highway ride sounds, after my NC750X experience, I really do enjoy veering off and exploring the lesser travelled gravel roads from time to time. Can the NT1100 still fulfil this role? Can I fit the NT1100 with the same battle wing tyres as my NC750X, which have proved to be great both on and off-road? Or am I trying to turn the NT1100 into something it was never meant to be? Or should I just stick with the Africa Twin option, knowing it will handle anything I throw at it? All these questions are bouncing around inside my head, and you can now see why I'm doing this exercise. Let's start the process of trying to pick a winner by delving into the specs. When it comes to power, torque and the drivetrain, well, it's a no-brainer. Both share the same engine and gearbox options and final chain drive. At 1084cc, the 270-degree parallel twin produces an identical 100 horsepower at 7,500 rpm and 76 foot-pound of torque at 6,250 rpm on both bikes. But that's not the whole picture. Honda writes, the NT1100 also features the full-fat performance of the twin-cylinder engine inherited from the Africa Twin, but with the intake and exhaust tuned for super smooth acceleration and a pleasing low RPM sound. Now, although they're stating the same horsepower and torque figures of the Africa Twin, typically when you start tuning intake lengths, it's in the search of either more torque or horsepower. Peak horsepower or torque figures haven't increased, nor have the peak values moved in the rev range, but the claim of super smooth acceleration and a pleasing low RPM sound has me curious and leads me to believe they may have adjusted a torque curve lower down in some way. I'm suspecting the torque curve is smoother and more even down low, and it may even start to build earlier in the rev range. And it may address some of the lower down hesitancies reported on the Africa Twin. As we won't be seeing the NT1100 here in Australia until the second quarter of 2022, I'll be eagerly watching for early ride reviews to see if this is noticeably true. At this point, I should point out for this comparison I'm using the lower spec Adventure Sports models. I'm not comparing the base model Africa Twin because I think it's fairer to compare the NT1100 to the more road-focused Africa Twin option. Comparing weights, the manual version NT1100 weighs the same as the manual Adventure Sports, with an identical 238 kilograms fully fueled ready to ride. It's the same deal for the DCT versions, 248 kilograms for the DCT NT1100 and 248 kilograms for the DCT Adventure Sports. Comparing UK pricing, that's the only pricing I've seen so far, we can see the NT1100 manual comes in at around £2,600 cheaper than the manual Africa Twin. And the DCT version NT1100 is around £2,800 cheaper than the DCT Africa Twin Adventure Sports. In the UK, the NT1100 is around 18% cheaper than the similarly spec'd Africa Twin Adventure Sports models. Using that as a guide, in Australia we could see the new NT1100 manual coming in at around $21,500 Australian dollars, and the DCT version hitting the showrooms at around $22,300 Australian dollars. Now remember, these Aussie figures are only a guess and I have no idea what the final pricing will be. A word of warning though. Someone in the comments did say that Honda may be dropping the panniers, which are normally fitted standard, for the Australian model. Honda Australia, if you do that, I and many others will be super annoyed. This bike needs to come with panniers fitted as standard as they are in other parts of the world. Do the right thing by Australians, Honda. Let's look at seat heights. The NT1100 measures 820mm from seat to ground, and the Africa Twin Adventure Sports measures at 850 to 870mm for the stock seat. The Africa Twin seat sits over an inch higher, but that's for the stock seat. You can get a low seat option at 825mm, which brings it closer to the NT1100. And for even more versatility, the Africa Twin has an even higher seat option, which brings the seat height to 895mm. You're going to need to be really tall to take advantage of that seat option. On paper, things are looking very similar, but let's overlay the NT1100 over the Africa Twin to see where we can pick up some key differences. With its reduced suspension travel and smaller 17-inch wheels, we can see the NT1100 is lower overall, although seat height is not as reduced as I might have predicted. Compared to the seat, the handlebars on the NT1100 are dropped a little lower than the Africa Twin, suggesting a slightly more forward-leaning riding position on the NT1100, rather than the more upright riding position of the Africa Twin. Noticeably lower is the screen height, however. The NT1100 screen is 5-position adjustable for both height and angle, but it remains to be seen if it will adjust high enough to compare with the Africa Twin's generous offering. On screens, after numerous complaints from shorter riders tired of looking through the 2020 Africa Twin screen, the new 2022 Africa Twin will have a lower screen than the previous model, albeit with a potentially greater range of adjustment. For taller riders, the Africa Twin may still be the better choice when it comes to wind buffeting though, if the NT1100 screen can't be adjusted high enough to match the Africa Twin. Time will tell. Also note the shorter wheelbase of the NT1100 and smaller wheel sizes. And the nose and frontal area are much lower too, reflective of the reduced suspension travel front and rear. Interestingly, the pillion seat height remains very similar on both bikes, so your passenger should get a good view of the world. The suspension travel is something to strongly consider. Having more suspension travel to soak up the bumps can only be a good thing. For comparison, the Africa Twin boasts 230mm of stroke on the front and 220mm on the rear. The NT1100 has an even 150mm front and rear. We're losing 70 to 80mm of suspension travel on the NT1100. That's around 3 inches. Now I'm sure the new suspension on the NT1100 will be tuned to fully maximise the given suspension travel, and I'm sure it will ride very nicely. It's just something I'm keeping in mind for when I get the opportunity to test ride both motorcycles. Another key factor for me is luggage. Having somewhere to stow my gear has become a must-have for me over the years. I was pleased to learn the panniers will be standard on the NT1100 overseas, but dismayed to learn they may not be happening in Australia. Storage is a big selling point for me. The Africa Twin doesn't come standard with panniers or boxes. Having to add them is just another expense I don't need. Having standard fitment panniers on the NT1100 would be a big bonus. I also like the slimness of the NT1100's panniers. just enough to carry what I need while still retaining filtering capabilities, although locking away helmets will be out of the question. I'll miss that feature on the NC750X when it's time to upgrade. Gearbox options and electronics-wise, they are both close enough for me. Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, cruise control, optional heated grips, LED lighting, 12-volt power outlet, they both tick all my boxes here. Fuel economy-wise, interestingly, the Africa Twin should be more fuel efficient than the NT1100. Honda quote 4.8 litres per 100 kilometres for the Africa Twin and 5 litres per 100 kilometres for the NT1100. And the Africa Twin has a larger fuel tank, 24.8 litres versus the 20.4 litres of the NT1100. Although Honda did say the NT1100 should be good for around 400 kilometres of range from that 20-litre fuel tank. I wonder if the predicted retuning down low on the NT1100 might be having an impact here. After the NC750X's frugal nature, fuel economy is a big consideration for me. So after casting my eye over the key metrics, where am I at? I really like the lower stature of the NT1100. It should feel like a smaller bike to ride. I also like its more comfortable seating options. This seat even comes with a small built-in backrest. I like its greater wind protection, its predicted smoother torque delivery, the option of an auto-blipping quickshifter for the manual version should I opt to not go with the DCT, and I like the 17-inch wheel sizes for the road and its shorter wheelbase. The NT1100 should feel more agile to ride. I also like the built-in luggage with those slim panniers. The NT1100 is ticking so many boxes. My only real concerns with the NT1100 are its screen. Being less fuel efficient and having a smaller tank than the Africa Twin is also something I'm putting a pin on. And I am concerned the NT1100 will change the way I ride. Could the NT1100 handle the sort of gravel roads I tend to frequent? Yes. Is it ideal? No. Would I be tempted to fit different tyres? Probably. Would I miss not venturing off-road so much if I didn't fit tyres? Maybe not. It's quite possible the NT1100 may be so nice to ride on the road I may not miss off-road excursions at all. I can also see my wife jumping back on board and doing more day trips, and that's a good thing too. The goal of this was to pick a winner today, but after weighing it all up, there are just too many questions that remain unanswered. The conclusion is, the only way I'm going to be able to make a decision now is to test ride both bikes. As soon as that's possible in Australia, that's exactly what I'll do. I'm sorry I couldn't come to a conclusion today with my musings, but maybe you have. If you're strongly considering the NT1100, let me know your thoughts below. I'd like to hear your pros and cons. If you've made it this far, thanks heaps for watching today, and hopefully you can join me again in the next one. Bye for now.